Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin with a simple question that should make all of us uneasy when an asset explodes to a record price. Who is celebrating and who is being set up? Silver touching 64 sounds like a triumph. Headlines cheer, social media erupts. But in political economy, whenever the crowd is told to cheer, it is our responsibility to stop, slow down, and ask who benefits from that excitement and who pays the bill when the music stops. We are told a familiar story. Silver is rising because it is scarce, because inflation is back, because the system is unstable. All of that may be partly true, but here is the hook: you are not supposed to notice. Prices do not rise in a vacuum. They rise inside systems of power. And when silver is suddenly presented as a guaranteed road to 100 and beyond, that is not optimism, it is marketing. And marketing in capitalism is never neutral. In the style of a critical economist, let us be clear. Silver is not just a metal. It is a financial instrument shaped by banks, hedge funds, derivatives markets, and state policy. Long before silver touched 64, the institutions with the most information had already positioned themselves. Futures contracts were written. Options were priced. Narratives were prepared. By the time the public hears about a historic breakout, the real decisions have already been made behind closed doors. The trap was not set at 64. It was set weeks ago, when people were trained to believe that missing out is worse than being wrong. Capitalism thrives on urgency. Buy now or be left behind. This is not analysis, it is emotional manipulation. The promise of 100 silver functions like a mirage in the desert. It keeps people moving forward even as the ground beneath them becomes more dangerous. Let us ask the uncomfortable question. If silver truly goes to 100, who sells at the top? Is it the working person buying coins after watching a video online? Or is it the institutional player unloading into that enthusiasm? History gives us the answer again and again. The working class is invited late to the party and then blamed when the hangover arrives. Yes, silver reflects real instability, inflation, de-dollarization debates, geopolitical conflict, ecological limits. But volatility is not liberation. A rising silver price does not challenge capitalism, it often reinforces it. It shifts wealth from late buyers to early movers. It rewards speculation over production. And it distracts us from deeper questions about why people feel forced to gamble in the first place. When society turns basic metals into lottery tickets, something has gone wrong. People are not buying silver because they love commodities. They are buying it because wages stagnate, housing is unaffordable, and savings feel unsafe. The silver frenzy is not a cause of crisis, it is a symptom of one. So the lesson is not, never buy silver. The lesson is to stop confusing price movements with progress. Real economic security does not come from guessing the next spike. It comes from democratic control over production, from stable incomes, from systems designed to meet human needs rather than extract maximum profit. When silver reaches a record price, like $64, the dominant explanation offered to the public is almost always scarcity. We are told there is not enough supply, that industrial demand is exploding, or that inflation is forcing investors into hard assets. But this explanation, while comforting in its simplicity, hides more than it reveals. Prices in modern economies do not rise merely because something is rare. They rise because powerful actors are able to shape markets, control narratives, and position themselves in advance. The first hook we must confront is this: if scarcity alone drove prices, why do those with the most money always seem prepared before the rest of society even notices the move? Silver is traded less as a physical metal and more as a financial product. Futures, options, exchange, traded funds, and leveraged derivatives dominate price discovery. These markets are not democratic spaces. They are arenas where banks, hedge funds, and large institutions operate with privileged access to information, faster execution, and far greater influence over liquidity. By the time silver appears on the evening news as a historic breakout, the most consequential transactions have already taken place quietly, legally, and profitably. The hook here is unsettling, but essential. Price explosions are rarely surprises to those who benefit most from them. Power also operates through storytelling. Markets move not only on numbers but on belief. When analysts, banks, and media outlets emphasize certain explanations, such as inflation fears or green energy demand, they are not simply informing the public, they are guiding expectations. Expectations create behavior, and behavior creates volume. This is how power translates into price. The narrative legitimizes the move after it has already begun, making it appear natural and inevitable rather than engineered and timed. Another hook worth sitting with is this: if silver's rise were purely about economic fundamentals, why does participation widen only after prices surge? The answer lies in asymmetry. Those closest to capital enter early and quietly. Those farther away enter late and loudly. The market rewards proximity to power, not insight or need. In this sense, the price of silver is not just a reflection of metal in the ground, it is a reflection of inequality embedded in the financial system. Ultimately, record prices tell us less about silver itself and far more about who controls markets, who sets the rules, and who arrives early enough to win. The movement to $64 is not a mystery of scarcity. It is a demonstration of how economic power expresses itself through price. Long before the public is invited to participate, when markets begin to circulate confident predictions of silver reaching $100 or more, we are not witnessing neutral analysis. We are observing a mechanism at work. Forecasts at that scale function less as objective economic expectations and more as tools that shape behavior. The hook here is uncomfortable, but necessary. Price targets are not just guesses about the future. They are instruments used in the present. They influence when people buy, how long they hold, and how much risk they are willing to accept. In financial capitalism, narratives are a form of infrastructure. A bold number like 100 silver simplifies complexity and creates urgency. It converts uncertainty into a story with a clear destination, and once that destination is widely believed, it generates momentum. Retail investors, small savers, and even cautious institutions begin to act not on fundamentals, but on fear of missing out. This is not accidental. Liquidity is required for large positions to be exited, and nothing produces liquidity faster than optimism broadcast at scale. Here is the critical hook. Those who promote upside targets are rarely positioned the same way as those who believe them. Large market participants often enter early, accumulate quietly, and then allow enthusiasm to do the heavy lifting. As prices rise and confidence spreads, selling becomes easier, not harder. The market needs buyers at higher levels, and the promise of triple-digit silver provides exactly that psychological fuel. What appears as collective belief is, in practice, a carefully timed transfer of risk. This mechanism has deep historical roots. From technology stocks to housing to commodities, extreme price projections have consistently appeared near inflection points, not beginnings. The narrative peaks when the market requires maximum participation from late entrants. The hook, again, is sobering. If the 100 story were truly about long-term value, it would be most loudly promoted when prices were low and interest was minimal, not after dramatic upward moves. There is also a moral dimension often ignored. When bold targets are framed as inevitabilities, caution is reframed as ignorance. Doubt becomes weakness. This social pressure discourages critical thinking and replaces analysis with loyalty to the story. In such an environment, risk is not eliminated, it is redistributed. It moves away from institutions capable of absorbing losses and toward individuals for whom mistakes carry real consequences. The 100 silver narrative, then, is not just about where prices might go. It is about how markets manufacture consent, how optimism becomes liquidity, and how belief itself becomes a tradable asset. When large numbers of people turn towards silver and other speculative assets, it is tempting to describe the phenomenon as a surge in financial sophistication or a renewed interest in investing. That explanation is comforting, but it avoids the deeper and more troubling reality. Speculation flourishes most aggressively where economic security has already failed. The first hook to confront is this: people do not gamble with their savings because they are greedy. They do so because stability has been removed from their lives. For decades, wages for the majority have failed to keep pace with productivity and living costs. At the same time, essentials such as housing, healthcare, and education have become increasingly unaffordable. Under these conditions, traditional paths to security, steady work, modest saving, long-term planning, no longer function as promised. When the economic floor erodes, individuals are pushed upward into risk, not out of desire but out of necessity. Silver becomes attractive not because it is glamorous, but because it appears to offer protection where institutions no longer do. Here is the hook that reveals the system's contradiction. Speculation is often framed as reckless behavior, yet it is the rational response to an irrational economic structure. When holding cash guarantees loss through inflation, when pensions feel unreliable, and when debt defines daily life, moving into volatile assets begins to look less like gambling and more like self-defense. The system creates insecurity and then blames individuals for reacting to it. Financial markets, however, are not neutral shelters. They are hierarchical spaces that reward scale, speed, and access. While households seek safety or modest gains, institutional players exploit volatility itself. This creates a cruel asymmetry. The same instability that terrifies workers becomes a profit engine for capital. The hook here is sharp. What feels like chaos to ordinary people is often a carefully monetized opportunity for those at the top. The surge in silver interest also reflects a collapse of trust. Trust in currencies and governments, in central banks, and in the promise that tomorrow will be better than today. When that trust weakens, tangible assets take on symbolic power. Silver is no longer just a metal, it becomes a vote of no confidence in the system. But symbolism does not equal safety. Without addressing the structural causes of insecurity, speculation only rearranges vulnerability rather than resolving it. In this light, the silver rush is not a story about markets performing efficiently. It is a social signal, flashing brightly, that economic stability has been privatized, risk has been individualized, and survival itself has been financialized. When silver prices surge, the language used to describe the event often borrows from the world of achievement. We hear about winners, smart money, and successful trades, as if rising prices reflect productive contribution or social value. This framing is deeply misleading. Financial markets do not reward usefulness, innovation, or labor. They reward timing. The hook to sit with is this: in speculative markets, being early matters far more than being right, and being large matters far more than being productive. Silver does not generate more value for society simply because its price increases. No additional goods or services are created when contracts change hands at higher levels. What changes instead is ownership. Wealth shifts from those who buy later to those who bought earlier. This is redistribution, but not of the democratic kind. It flows upward toward those with capital, access, and patience, not toward those who contribute most to the real economy. The market celebrates this outcome as efficiency, yet it produces no corresponding improvement in living standards. The hook becomes sharper when we consider who cannot participate on equal terms. Workers paid wages cannot wait indefinitely for optimal entry points. They cannot absorb large drawdowns. They cannot hedge losses with complex derivatives. Institutions can. They use volatility as a resource, not a threat. A sudden spike in silver is not an opportunity for everyone. It is a filter that separates those who can survive uncertainty from those who cannot. Timing, in this context, is not skill alone, it is privilege. Another uncomfortable hook emerges when we examine how value is defined. In productive economies, value is tied to meeting human needs. In financialized economies, value is tied to price movement. This inversion means that activity generating the greatest profits may contribute nothing to social well-being. A silver rally enriches traders without employing workers, building infrastructure, or improving productivity. Yet the rewards are real, while the social contribution is abstract or non-existent. This gap helps explain a broader frustration felt across societies. People sense that hard work no longer guarantees security, while speculative success appears disconnected from effort or merit. Markets insist this outcome is neutral and natural. In reality, it reflects rules designed to favor mobility of capital over stability of life. The reward structure tells a clear story: produce value for others, and your compensation is limited. Position yourself advantageously in markets, and your upside is theoretically unlimited. Seen through this lens, silver's price movement is not a celebration of economic health. It is a demonstration of a system that confuses motion with progress and profit with purpose, leaving social value behind while financial value races ahead. In modern capitalism, volatility is often treated as an anomaly, something to be feared or blamed on external shocks. Yet if we look closely, instability is not a flaw, it is a built-in feature of the system. Financial markets, commodities, and speculative assets are designed to generate profit precisely through movement, uncertainty, and sudden shifts. The first hook to consider is this: the chaos that alarms ordinary investors is often the same chaos that produces immense returns for those with knowledge, scale, and leverage. Silver is a perfect example. Price swings are not accidental, they are amplified by futures contracts, options, and leveraged positions. Each of these instruments allows market participants to magnify gains or losses far beyond the underlying asset's intrinsic value. What appears to the public as turbulence is, in the eyes of institutions, an opportunity. Volatility becomes a resource rather than a risk. The system incentivizes instability because instability creates motion, motion creates liquidity, and liquidity creates profit. The more dramatic the swing, the more profitable the market becomes for those positioned to exploit it. Here is another hook: volatility does not impact all participants equally. Small investors, pension funds, or ordinary savers experience price swings as fear or loss. Large institutions experience them as an engine for strategy. In this sense, the same market movement that terrifies the majority is celebrated by the few. Capitalism, by design, rewards the ability to absorb or leverage risk while exposing those without access to severe vulnerability. Volatility is a tool for extracting wealth, not a mere reflection of economic reality. Financial innovation further embeds instability into the system. Derivatives, margin trading, and high-frequency algorithms create feedback loops where small changes can trigger outsized effects. In the silver market, a minor change in industrial demand or speculative sentiment can cascade into dramatic swings in price. This is not inefficiency, it is efficiency as defined by capital, maximizing returns from movement rather than stability. The public is taught to fear these swings, while insiders prepare to profit from them. The hook deepens when considering narrative manipulation. Institutions and media amplify volatility through framing, emphasizing the drama of price spikes and dips, and creating psychological pressure for participation. Fear and excitement are monetized, creating self-fulfilling cycles that fuel further instability. The market does not just reflect the world, it shapes perception, behavior, and ultimately the allocation of wealth. In this light, volatility is not a risk to avoid. It is a commodity to be exploited by those with power and insight. When we look at the fascination with silver or other commodities as a path to financial security, it is easy to mistake price movements for meaningful progress. The hook here is subtle but critical. No metal, no matter how rare or historically valued, can replace systemic economic reform. Speculative gains may provide temporary relief or the illusion of safety, but they do nothing to address the structural conditions that drive insecurity in the first place. Betting on commodities is a coping mechanism, not a solution. Speculation often masks underlying inequality. People are drawn to silver not because it generates real wealth, but because the economic system offers few alternatives. Wages stagnate, social safety nets are limited, and inflation erodes purchasing power. Under these circumstances, assets like silver are treated as a hedge against the failures of the broader system. The hook is uncomfortable. Society pushes individuals to gamble as a substitute for security, and then blames them when losses occur. Speculation becomes an imposed necessity rather than a voluntary choice. Moreover, markets reward mobility of capital far more than stability of life. Holding silver or other commodities provides the perception of control, but in reality, volatility remains as pronounced as ever. Price spikes and corrections are engineered by those with access to information and liquidity, leaving late participants exposed to risk. The hook deepens when we recognize that these apparent opportunities serve to reinforce the existing hierarchy. The system allows those with privilege to profit from uncertainty, while ordinary participants shoulder the consequences of miscalculations. Another critical dimension is the symbolic power of commodities. Silver becomes more than a metal. It represents trust, protection, and foresight. But symbolism cannot substitute for material security. Owning silver does not guarantee stable housing, healthcare, or income. The illusion of empowerment provided by commodities can distract from the real work of creating systemic reforms that protect society as a whole. The hook here is psychological hope is monetized, turning necessity into a game. Finally, reliance on speculative assets can obscure collective solutions. The focus on individual gains from silver encourages private strategies rather than democratic interventions. Real reform, whether in wages, financial regulation, or public infrastructure, requires collective action and structural change. Commodities cannot create fairness, stability, or equitable opportunity. They merely offer a narrow, temporary hedge for those who can afford to participate. The system teaches that survival is individualized, and the hook is this: betting on silver feels proactive, but it does not challenge the forces that make such bets necessary. Let me close where I began. Silver at 64 is not the headline we should fear or celebrate. The real headline is this: a system so unstable that millions are pushed toward speculation as survival strategy. When someone promises you 100 silver as destiny, remember? Destiny in capitalism is usually written by those with the most power, long before the rest of us are invited to read the script. Thank you.